The series begins when police are alerted to the discovery of a male body found wrapped in a garbage bag and dumped at a street corner. Detective Jeanette and her colleagues are called to the scene. No identification documents are found at the site, and the caller who reported the body does not provide any personal information. However, the police manage to trace the call. Jeanette notices a yellow liquid on top of the bag, possibly urine, and asks the forensic team to analyze it. Meanwhile, a man named Amar is in the airplane restroom. He rips up his passport and flushes it. Without valid identification, he is stopped at airport control and taken in for questioning elsewhere. The police storm into the home of a dentist named Carl Lowry and arrest him for possession and distribution of child abuse material. Carl remains disturbingly calm during the arrest. At the police station, the caller is identified as Steve Cooper, a human resources consultant in his 30s. The victim is believed to be between 16 and 20 years old. Jeanette wants to check if he matches any existing missing persons reports. Since he is not listed in the national database, the team suspects he may be a refugee or a tourist. Jeanette orders a review of CCTV footage from a half-mile radius around the crime scene to help identify the suspect. Steve is summoned to the station for questioning. At first, he dodges their questions, but eventually confesses. He admits that the previous night, he went to visit his lover who lives on Broad Street. While they were in bed, his lover's partner unexpectedly returned home. Steve escaped through the back of the apartment, came across the garbage bag, and urinated on it, unaware of its contents. After seeing the corpse, he called the police. He begs the police to keep it a secret from his wife. Jeanette tells him they'll collect his clothes and take a DNA sample to rule him out as a suspect. Elsewhere, Dr. Sophia Craven is assigned to question Carl Lowry. Carl tells her a disturbing story about Adonis, the Greek mythological figure, describing him as perfect and the product of incest. He then asks about her father, but she avoids the topic. When she directly asks if he has ever abused a child, Carl dodges the question. He continues, describing his sickening fantasies, and Sophia notices that he uses the word we, implying he is part of a group involved in child abuse. Carl becomes increasingly excited, bragging that it would be easy for him to buy a child or make someone disappear with just a snap of his fingers. Back at the police station, Detective Mike confirms that Steve Cooper's alibi checks out. The team realizes that the building where the body was found belongs to Mount Park Dental, Carl Lowry's clinic. Jeanette decides to go upstairs to the chief's office to request an interview with Carl. As she and Lou wait for the elevator, Sophia is also holding the button to go down to the underground parking. The elevator ends up malfunctioning, forcing Jeanette and Lou to return to the ground floor with her. Jeanette is visibly irritated, as she is eager to speak to her boss. Eventually, Jeanette makes it to the chief's office, Superintendent Verity Pound, but Verity refuses her request. Jeanette tries to push the issue anyway and goes to speak with Frank, the lead detective on Carl's case, asking for help in gaining access to Carl. Frank is already frustrated and just wants Jeanette to back off. He eventually brings up Dr. Sophia Craven, Carl's assigned psychiatrist, suggesting Jeanette might get something from her. However, he warns that Sophia is unlikely to share any information. When Jeanette sees Sophia's photo, she realizes she messed up. Sophia is the woman she had just argued with in the elevator. Still, Jeanette gives it a shot and calls her, but Sophia refuses to cooperate without a court order. During the call, Sophia notices a woman causing a commotion in the park and abruptly hangs up. Jeanette, angry about being cut off, tells Lou they need to head to forensics. Meanwhile, Sophia rushes to the scene, where a woman is threatening people with a knife. The woman appears to suffer from multiple personality disorder. Sophia addresses her by one of her common identities, manages to de-escalate the situation, and takes the knife from her. Meanwhile, Amar and several other young men are transported to refugee accommodation in the suburbs. A man checks their names and instructs them to head inside. Jeanette and Lou meet with forensic Dr. Eva Andrick. Eva explains that the body is completely frozen and cannot be examined until it thaws. She also points out something odd: the victim had a pedicure. Lou suspects the killer wanted the body to be found and noticed. Later, Jeanette returns home after a long day. She finds that her husband and son ordered pizza instead of eating the nutritious curry she had prepared. The dishwasher is still full, despite her turning it on in the morning. Her husband, an unsuccessful artist who stays at home all day, still hasn't done even basic chores. She is about to scold them but notices her father is over and sitting with them in the living room. She updates him on the case.
Her father, a former police officer, reminisces about how things used to be done back in his time with more direct approaches. Then her son, Joe, slip out that no one picked him up from school, and he had to get a ride with a classmate's parents. Jeanette is furious with her husband. She's busy with the case, but he isn't, and his excuse that the car doesn't work isn't good enough. Jeanette's father offers to cover the cost of fixing the car and tells them both to step up as parents before leaving, clearly disappointed.
Meanwhile, Sophia returns home and listens to a recording of a patient named Victoria, who speaks at length about love and affection for someone. Later that night, a man visits Sophia and spends the night with her. That same night, Amar begins to bond with one of the guys at the refugee house. He notices another man on the other side of the room speaking on the phone. In the middle of the night, a mysterious figure appears and drops another body, this time not in a bag, but placed in front of a meat warehouse. The next morning, Sophia continues listening to the audio recordings of Victoria. She notices her bag lies on the floor. When her boyfriend says he didn't touch it, it feels unsettling. Meanwhile, Jean and Lou are informed about the new body and arrive at the scene. They find another male victim in a similar state as the first, frozen, injured, and with a pedicure. Mike Dilliston tells Jean that the warehouse belongs to David White, a former butcher turned self-made millionaire. One of David's employees found the body early in the morning. Jean asks David if he knows Carl Lowry. David avoids the question and threatens to get a lawyer if they keep pushing. Later, Mike confirms they have a clear CCTV shot to review. Jean is still convinced Carl is involved. Elsewhere, Amar has breakfast with his new friend Jamal. A man who's been watching them approaches and offers Amar 2 candy bars. Amar accepts but warns Jamal that nothing comes free. Back at the station, Jean and her team watch the footage. They see someone in a large hooded coat moving the bag and dumping the body. It's hard to tell if it's a man or a woman. Jean thinks it's a man, but Lou suggests it might be a woman. Jean believes the killer is trying to send a message by leaving both victims with their feet strangely clean. Mike wonders if it's for a religious reason. Meanwhile, at Sophia's office, she is working with the woman with multiple disorder. Her real name is Margaret, but her other identity is Angela, who is more destructive. After a while, Margaret turns into Angela, who says she wants to end her life but doesn't want to hurt anyone else. She clearly struggles very hard with her disorder. At the station, Eva tells Jean and Lou that the victim had lidocaine, a kind of anesthetic, in his system. It was injected directly into the bloodstream, and he was likely awake when tortured. She shows them several of his injuries. She thinks the victim was around 17, but they don't know his background yet. Jean is again suspicious of Carl involvement because he has the access to lidocaine, but Lou says it doesn't fit Carl's usual victim. Jean insists on speaking to Carl again. Meanwhile, Sophia reviews a case file for Victoria Berkman. She seems to have serious mental disorder. Her family seems to play a major role in her issues. A flashback to her childhood shows a young Victoria finding an injured crow. She picks it up and takes it inside, but her mom instantly kills the bird and tells her to leave it out for the foxes to eat it. Another flashback shows Victoria as an adult watching a family with a young daughter from a distance. With her suspicion of Carl growing, Jean becomes more determined to speak with Sophia and calls her again to arrange a meeting. Sophia agrees to a quick coffee. Meanwhile, Amar hears Jamal yelling in the common room and rushes in. Someone has tried to plant drugs on him. They argue and start to fight until the Candyman, Basim, shows up. Jamal shows Amar the cocaine that was planted on him, and the two leave the room together. At the coffee shop, Jean and Sophia meet. Jean admits she was the rude woman in the elevator. Sophia laughs it off. Jean says she's convinced Carl Lowry is involved. Sophia reminds her that she can't share confidential information. She explains that Carl truly believes he's done nothing wrong and once bragged about buying a child. Sophia says she doesn't know if Carl is guilty, but she believes anyone is capable of murder. Jean receives a message and heads back to the station. At the station, Superintendent Verity Pound warns Jean and Mike that the case could fall apart once the media gets involved. She also knows about Jean's meeting with Sophia. Jean insists that Carl is part of a pedophile ring and they need to act while he's still in custody. Verity agrees to allow the interview but warns Jean she could be reported to professional standards. Later, Amar returns the candy and drugs to Basim. Basim offers him £300 to fight at a local gym. Amar agrees. Jean sits down to interview Carl. He says it feels good to talk about his attraction to children. Jean shows him pictures of the victims. Carl says he doesn't recognize them and denies killing anyone. He adds that he doesn't like boys. When Jean asks if he has friends who do, he refuses to answer. After the interview, Jean tells Lou she doesn't believe Carl is the one dumping the bodies, but she still thinks he's involved. She calls Sophia again, and they agree to meet. David White visits Sophia at her office. He missed his last session but insists he needs to talk. He wants to play the shopping game, where they list items in alphabetical order. They start with an egg, then David suddenly says he bought a silencer. Later, Jean and Sophia meet at Jean's house and share a glass of wine. Jean admits she's unsure how directly Carl is involved, but she believes he's connected. Sophia begins telling the story of a patient named Victoria. Sophia pushed too hard, and the girl attempted suicide during a session, then she disappeared. Suddenly, Joe comes in. Jean's husband Alex follows and admits he had a meeting, so Joe was left alone. He says it worked out because he sold a painting. Not wanting to get pulled into family drama, Sophia decides to leave. Meanwhile, Jamal and Amar arrive at the boxing center. Lou is there coaching the boys. At the same time Carl is shown being poisoned, Sophia rushes home and remembers Victoria saying her mother was cruel, not for what she did, but for what she failed to do. On her way home, Sophia sees Victoria appear in front of her. The next day, Sophia wakes to find her door open and construction noise outside. She shuts it but notices an earring on the floor. Another body is found near a school, with a bag lying nearby. Lou requests staff and student records, along with CCTV footage. He and Jean meet with Peter Drake, the school principal. Lou mentions that Carl Lowry was found poisoned at home and is now in ICU. Sophia discovers her office has been vandalized. The word lies is scrawled across her notes. She reads from one of them, which describes how close Victoria's house is to a graveyard. Nearby, Amar stands with Basim, ready to board a van. Jamal joins them shortly after. The next day, Principal Peter Drake speaks with Lou and Jeanette. He claims he has no idea who could be behind the murders. When asked if he knows Carl Lowry or David White, he admits he knows both but seems suspicious. He also confesses that the rugby field cameras don't work. Jean doesn't believe him. Lou thinks Jean is overanalyzing, and they argue. Mike informs them the body has been taken to Eva for examination. Using the address details, Sophia goes looking for Victoria, but no one answers the door. Lou vents to Mike about Jean's investigation methods. They stop in an alley, and Lou pays a thug for information. Mike watches from a distance and disapproves. He tells Lou the man shouldn't be paid. Lou says Mike could learn something from him. Meanwhile, Victoria secretly watches Madeline working at a pig farm. Madeline senses someone is watching but only finds a cigarette on the ground. At the station, Jean briefs the team about the new body. Everyone at Beecham College has been accounted for. She says the killer is targeting vulnerable young people. She also mentions that 3 suspects were seen at a recent Leaders of Commerce event. Mike leaves and returns with an update. The second victim may be Hassan Rahimi, an Iranian teen missing for 18 months. Lou and Mike go to notify the boy's parents. At the station, the father insists the body isn't his son. Their suspicion returns to the idea that the victims may be undocumented immigrants. Mike updates Jean, and they decide to search hostels for evidence. After Mike leaves, Jean checks Carl Lowry's file and finds that Lou was the officer in a 2019 rape case that was suddenly dropped. She brings Lou in and asks about Ursula Wilson. Lou says he interviews hundreds of people and doesn't remember the case. Jean isn't convinced and decides to speak to Ursula without him. Amar and others arrive at a warehouse. A man gives them 4 drips, saying it will help with the pain. Jean visits Ursula and asks about the 2019 case. Ursula explains that Carl targeted her when she was 18. He took her to a hotel and made her pretend to be his daughter. When she tried to leave, he locked the door. She believes he drugged her with lidocaine. She refuses to name the other man involved. She also says a police officer took her seriously at the time, but also told her no one would believe her because she was a sex worker. Later, Jean sits in her car, about to call her husband, but instead calls Sophia. That night, Madeline puts on makeup and tries to sneak out. Her dad, Ben, stops her. She lies and says she's going to a friend's house. He lets her go. Jean meets Sophia and apologizes for the night before. Sophia tells her not to be sorry. She reveals that she's bisexual and currently dating a married man named Lance. She also shares that she's looking for a missing patient and is worried. Jean, trying to comfort her, touches her leg, then quickly apologizes. Madeline goes to a party at a friend's house. A boy approaches her, compliments her, and asks if she wants to go back to his place. She agrees. Outside, Victoria is watching again. At Jacob's place, he kisses Madeline, but she gets nervous and pushes him away. Jacob tells her it's okay and goes to get them a drink. At the station, Superintendent Verity Pound finds Jean still there. Jean says she believes the 3 men linked to the crime scenes are killing the victims. Verity reminds her nothing has been proven and tells her to go home. Meanwhile, Amar is forced to fight Jamal in a cage. He hesitates, but Jamal attacks first. After a few hits, Amar fights back. A crowd of older men cheers them on. Eventually, Amar overpowers Jamal and keeps punching until Jamal is unconscious. Amar screams in rage. The next morning, Madeline wakes in Jacob's bed. He's still asleep. She realizes she wet the bed and leaves in shame. Amar sees Jamal's body being taken away. He tries to run, but Basim chases and stops him. Victoria drives through the woods and calls Jean from an anonymous number. She tells her another body has been found in Ferret's Wood. Jean is alarmed. How does this woman have her number? Victoria stops and offers Madeline a ride. Madeline hesitates but agrees and gives her the address to her home near a nearby farm. They introduce themselves. A flashback shows Victoria playing with a boy named Martin outdoors. When Martin's mother, Barbara, invites Victoria to dinner, she agrees, only to be shocked upon entering the house and seeing a man bathing Martin. She tries to flee but is stopped at the gate by Barbara, who asks if Victoria is okay. When Victoria doesn't respond, Barbara admits that Victoria is an important friend to Martin and is always welcome at their house. Back in the present, police search for another victim. Jean and Lou argue about Ursula, as Lou discouraged her from continuing the case. Lou defends himself, claiming he was being realistic, not coercive. Sophia tries to call Margaret, but someone else answers her phone and informs her that Margaret has passed away. Lou informs Jean that a drone picked up signs of disturbed ground near a nearby farm. Jean goes there to investigate and speaks with Vincent, who owns the land but not the farmhouse. He reveals the farmhouse belongs to a couple named Mary and Ben. While she is questioning him, Lou calls to inform her of their latest discovery. As Jean leaves, she asks Vincent if he knows Carl, and he replies that he's heard of Carl's bad reputation. Meanwhile, Madeline watches the conversation from a distance. Elsewhere, Mike visits the Royal Hotel hoping to identify a murder victim. The staff aren't very helpful but mention a list of people who left suddenly. They also mention Lou and his boxing club. As Mike leaves, he spots Amar and questions him. Basim walks in, so Amar denies knowing the victims and lies about his injuries. Mike gives him his card and tells him to call if he needs help. After searching the forest, Jean and Lou find a skull with a hat they believe belonged to Martin. Martin disappeared 25 years ago when he was 8 years old, and it was a major case in the area. They visit the farmhouse and speak with Ben and Mary, who claim to know nothing. When told the remains might be Martin's, Ben says his family lived nearby and that Martin once played with their daughter, Victoria, who he claims is now dead. When Jean asks for more information about Victoria, both act suspiciously, and Ben refuses to provide a photo of her. Madeline overhears this and is surprised to learn that she may have a sister. Seeing their uncooperative behavior, Jean decides to leave and sees Madeline on the stairs. Sophia confides in her therapist that she regrets not paying more attention to Margaret. The therapist suggests it's time to let go of Victoria. Jean begins to piece things together and feels there's a connection between the 3 murder cases and the family they just visited. As she reflects, she notices the time and rushes off, realizing she's late for a date. Sophia runs into David, who again asks for a session to play the shopping game. She accuses him of invading her privacy, but then reluctantly agrees. Suddenly, he becomes aggressive and she yells no. Turns out Jean has a date with Alex. He starts by talking about his recent art deals, but Jean quickly dives into the details of the day's crime scene. Alex seems offended, expressing how pressured he feels and that he's had to step back from his job to support her. Jean apologizes and tries to lighten the mood, but it doesn't work. She didn't even look at his artwork. Meanwhile, Amar sees Basim targeting another immigrant for his ring. After dinner, Sophia invites Jean over, and Jean instantly agrees, feeling more connected to Sophia than to her own husband. Jean is impressed with Sophia's house and her exquisite taste. Sophia shares her guilt over Margaret's death and her obsessive review of the case. Their conversation is interrupted when Sophia's boyfriend, Lance, shows up with flowers, prompting Jean to leave. The next day, Eva confirms through dental records that the body is Martin Ryan. Jean is shaken. It was a case her father had pursued for much of his career. Lou learns that Martin was last seen with Victoria when they went to play in the woods. At school, Madeline is upset to learn that Jacob has been telling people she wet the bed. Her friends joke about it, but she's furious and storms off. Meanwhile, at home, Sophia listens to recordings of Margaret. She's summoned to the police station to give a statement about Margaret's condition. While getting coffee, she sees Victoria watching her from outside. She remembers Victoria saying the world isn't built for people like her and that she's an outcast. Victoria then tried to kill herself by stabbing her wrist. Sophia is terrified by the memory, which is interrupted when Lance calls her to join him in the bathtub. When he teasingly touches her with his leg, Sophia suddenly grabs him and lifts him up, nearly drowning him. He is terrified, and Sophia is confused by her own actions. Later, Jean visits Martin's father, Richard, who says Barbara died 3 weeks ago. He recalls Victoria returning alone from the woods the day Martin vanished. Lou informs Jean there is no death record for Victoria. Mike is nearly certain that the first victim may be Daniel Rexa and shares his findings with the team. As the case progresses, Jean feels more questions need answering. Lou is assigned to investigate Victoria, while Mike is tasked with checking local hostels. Carl Lowry has regained consciousness and may be ready to cooperate. Finally, Amar arrives at the station asking to speak with Mike. However, when he sees Lou, he starts to act withdrawn and quickly leaves the police station. In the meantime, the person in the black coat turns out to be Victoria. She shows up at the hospital, where Carl seems to recognize her and makes a creepy comment that she still smells the same. Victoria looks at him with disgust and stabs him to death. In the middle of the night, Victoria breaks into a freezer and drags out a body wrapped in plastic. At the police station, Jean, Mike Dilliston, and Lou review CCTV footage from the hospital where Carl was killed. They realize it's the same person who previously arranged the bodies. This time, the footage is clearer, and they become more certain the killer is a woman, leading Jean to suspect Victoria's involvement. They also discover that Victoria once accused her father of abuse, though the claims were later dismissed. Her academic career had also ended abruptly at Beecham College. Later, Sophia joins the team to help profile Victoria. She confirms that the woman in the CCTV footage is Victoria and believes Victoria was indeed abused, even if not everything she says is truthful. Jean and Lou visit Victoria's parents, Ben and Mary, who had previously claimed she was dead. Ben insists Victoria is gone, possibly from suicide, and even suggests she may have killed Martin. Jean challenges them about Ben's past and Victoria's accusations. When Jean mentions Madeline, Ben becomes irritated and abruptly ends the conversation. Outside, Jean decides to notify Child Protection Services. Ursula contacts Jean, saying she knows about Carl's death and has remembered something important. When they meet, Ursula finally opens up. After Lou took over Carl's sexual assault complaint, he initially acted like a protector but later manipulated her into sleeping with him. Ursula now feels used all over again. Jean is devastated to hear this and promises Ursula that she will not let anyone abuse their power like that again. Meanwhile, Mike goes to see Amar at his residence and tries to talk to him again. Besim intervenes and tries to block the conversation, demanding money in exchange for information. Mike is reluctant but eventually complies. Besim gives the names of 3 victims, Daniel, Faisal, and Samuel, who died in underground fights. When Amar sees Besim keeping all the money for himself, he quietly seeks out Mike again and hints that a police officer is helping organize these fights. Though he still refuses to come to the station, Jean returns home and finds her dad cooking dinner for them. She talks to him about Martin, and her father expresses frustration that they couldn't find any evidence or trace of him back then. Jean knows her father has always been a good man and a good cop, but she's starting to realize that not all police officers are like him, and now she knows that Lou is one of the bad ones. Her father, however, is more concerned that Alex, her husband, isn't supporting her enough to focus on the case, and now Alex is even AWOL. Back at the station, Mike is still working on the case. Eva arrives and confirms that all 3 bodies had traces of lidocaine, though it wasn't the cause of death. She details the severe injuries caused by fighting. With the new information Mike has gathered about illegal fights, they conclude the victims were forced to fight to the death. Later that night, Alex comes home and wants to talk, but Jean postpones the conversation and instead tells him about Lou. Alex listens and encourages her to keep standing up for what's right. Meanwhile, Sophia goes on a date with Lance. He tells her he confessed the affair to his wife and wants to leave her so they can be together publicly. Contrary to his expectations, Sophia doesn't seem happy. Frustrated, Lance lashes out and storms off. Later, Sophia wanders to Jean's house, visibly shaken. She tells Jean about the confrontation with Lance. Jean comforts her, and Sophia kisses her on the cheek before leaving. Upstairs, Alex sees the moment. That night, Amar steals Besim's bag and runs away. The next morning, Mike updates Jean on Eva's findings. He also tells her he suspects Lou as the corrupt officer, using his position for personal gain rather than upholding the law. Jean asks him to keep the information quiet for now. Meanwhile, Victoria meets with Madeline again and reveals that they're sisters. She urges Madeline to run away with her and seek revenge on their abuser. Madeline is stunned but agrees to meet her the next morning. Jean texts Sophia to ease any awkwardness after the previous night. Mike confirms the identities of the victims, Daniel, Faisal, and Samuel, all asylum seekers. He believes they were exploited and forced into illegal fights. Sophia urges Mike to convince Amar to come to the station and testify, and he agrees to try again. Lou arrives, casually making small talk and complimenting the team's progress as if he has nothing to do with the case. Mike, clearly irritated, heads off to the hostel. Later, Jean meets with her superior, Superintendent Verity Pound, to discuss Lou. Verity warns Jean to be absolutely certain before accusing a fellow officer of misconduct. At the hostel, Mike discovers Amar has vanished. Meanwhile, Madeline prepares to run away. Ben and Mary are watching TV when Ben gets up and walks toward Madeline's room. Mary raises the volume to drown out what she knows is about to happen. Ben enters the room and approaches Madeline with clear malicious intent. But this time, Madeline fights back, striking him with a stick. She tells him she knows everything he's done, she knows about Victoria, and she plans to leave with her. As she tries to escape, Ben blocks her and tells her she belongs to him. Then he drops a shocking revelation: Victoria is actually her mother. Then Ben pushes Madeline down the stairs, knocking her unconscious. Mary watches the entire scene in silence, doing nothing to stop it. In a haunting flashback, young Victoria searches for Martin. Ben shows her Martin's dead body and threatens her, saying no one will believe her if she tells the truth. Instead, he'll blame her for accidentally killing Martin while playing. He tells her she belongs to him and that no matter where she goes, he'll find her. In the present, early in the morning, adult Victoria waits for Madeline. Ben uses Madeline's phone to call Victoria and tells her Madeline won't be coming. Madeline's body now lies lifeless on the floor. She died the night before after falling down the stairs. At the farm, Vincent is shown walking into the meat freezer and dragging out one of the frozen bodies. Meanwhile, Alex confronts Jean about Sophia showing up at their door last night. Lou stops by to give Joe a football shirt and offers Jean a ride to work. She feels uncomfortable and snaps at him but quickly apologizes and makes an excuse to retrieve her wallet, which she says she left in Lou's car the day before. In his car, she finds a suspicious bag filled with large rolls of cash. Back in the countryside, Victoria sneaks into the Berkman house. A flashback reveals that she is actually the daughter of Ben and Mary. Ben had abused her and made her pregnant. After she gave birth to Madeline, he gaslit her into believing she accidentally killed the baby. In the present, Victoria hears a noise, follows it, and discovers bloodstains on the wall and Madeline's dead body. Ben returns and once again blames her for everything. At the police station, anti-corruption officers arrive to arrest Lou. He becomes extremely angry and starts shouting. Before they take him away, Jean locks him in a room to confront him privately. Lou confesses to using vulnerable boys to sell drugs. They had worked together for a long time, making the betrayal especially painful for Jean. She eventually leaves the room and lets the officers take Lou away. Meanwhile, Victoria manages to tie up Ben. She names the people she loved that he murdered, Martin and Madeline, and then sets him on fire. Jean returns home heartbroken, and Alex drops another bombshell: he wants a divorce. Later, Jean learns that 2 bodies were found in the fire at the Berkman farm, one burnt, presumed to be Ben, and the other Madeline, whose body had been carefully placed outside the fire in an S-like setting. Mary is missing. The police now consider Victoria the prime suspect in all the cases and are urgently searching for her. David, clearly panicked, makes a phone call saying, "Carl and Ben are dead, she's coming for us next." Jean is devastated. Sophia calls to check on her, and Jean asks her to come over. Jean vents to Sophia about the bizarre things that have happened and says she needs to find Victoria. Sophia comforts her, and the two share an intimate moment, eventually ending up in bed together. It is soon revealed that Sophia and Victoria are actually the same person. Victoria is an alternate personality of Sophia. Later that night, while Jean is asleep, Sophia/Victoria is shown opening a hidden door in the house where Mary is being held captive. Not only is Victoria exacting revenge on those who abused her, but she is also freeing some of the victims' bodies from the illegal fighting ring so they can expose the truth to the police. Meanwhile, Vincent, the farm owner, is the one storing the bodies and feeding them to his pigs. He is likely the mysterious man who has been speaking with David. Victoria, or rather Sophia, is ready to make him her next target.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more videos like this.